Hey guys, OGalbina here, bringing you guys our next episode of Draft League Study, continuing our little mini-series, going through each typing and kind of evaluating them in the Draft League metagame, their strengths, their weaknesses, what they're good at, and typical roles you'll see Pokemon from this typing in the draft format. So let me know if you guys enjoy this concept. If you enjoy the video, be sure to drop a like. If you're new here, be sure to drop a sub. I believe only about 60% of you guys that are watching the videos are actually subs, so 40% of you guys aren't. Might as well go ahead and sub button. I really appreciate it. You might think you are, but you aren't. So with that being said, we're doing normal type Pokemon today. Shouts to Eli the Rebel. He gave us the suggestion of doing normal type this video. So if you want to see as your specific favorite typing next video, like say you're a big ice type guy, or dragons because they're dope, fire types, and whether or not you know the fire, water, grass core is necessary and things like that, definitely comment down below. Tell me what your favorite normal type is as well. My favorite's gotta be the GOAT Licky Licky. Realistically, on that thumbnail, that should probably be a Snorlax, a little bit more iconic than Big Licksters, but my absolute favorite normal in the draft format. No contest. And I'm sure if you guys are here, any of you guys have seen our videos before, you'll know that Licky is by far my favorite normal, especially fat normal. So with that being said, I think we're good to jump into it. We're going to do it very similar to how we did it last time, in the sense that we are going to start off with going over its average stats, and then its strengths and weaknesses. So let's go ahead and look at the average stats. We're going to see that the average HP stat, and this is fully evolved Pokemon. I didn't do that for Bug last time, and I realized it's kind of a flawed way of doing things, because 95 to 99% of the Pokemon we're going to be talking about are fully evolved. The other ones, we're missing out on a couple, honestly, from the normal typing, but those are all going to be Eviolite, nuisances, and things like that. Whereas this is a little bit more of an accurate representation of the stats, and you're going to see very well-rounded 88.12 HP, 88.96 attack, 74.29 defense, 71.64 special attack, 79.13 speed def, and 84.13 speed. Incredibly balanced. Everything's really, really close together. Special attack being the lowest, and then defense being the next lowest was actually pretty surprising to me, because you do see a lot of really, really fat, bulky normal types, and I think that's one of the things that's cool about normal types, is there's so many different kinds of them, and they're such versatile Pokemon. We can kind of talk about the typing itself a little bit too. Only being weak to fighting. Ghost types are immune to normal types, obviously, their stabs at the very least, and ghost types can't hit normal types with their stab. That's it. Very simple typing, but very effective, especially in a format like this, and we'll kind of talk about it a little bit. I think having a good normal type, having a good ghost immunity in Generation 8 in a draft league is 100% needed. Don't care what you say. You could have the best dark type in the format to be your ghost resist. I think having an immunity is so important. In a generation where pursuit does not exist, you want to punish teams for locking Shadow Ball. Even if you have a Drapion, great Pokemon. If I'm a Gengar and I'm running Spec Shadow Ball and I'm hitting you for 25-30% depending on your spread, and like your AV or something like that every time, I'm not being punished for doing so. I can just click Shadow Ball, because there's really not that can really guard me from doing so, other than a fat dark type, and most of them don't have recovery. A lot of normals do have recovery, and not only that, they obviously can be immune to that normal stab. So you see that 79 base speed def is pretty solid in that regard, which is obviously very nice. I was very surprised to see that attack was the highest, overall stat, but there are some really, really strong offensive normals that we'll go into a little bit as well. And I'm definitely not opposed to drafting an offensive normal. At least having an immunity is very nice at the very least. You do want to have that immunity. It's a little bit tough when the immunity is pretty frail and you get caught with one stray Focus Blast or Aura Sphere or Sludge Wave from a Gengar and you just die. That's not good. That is unfortunate, but at least you're deterring teams from clicking Specs and Scarf Shadow Ball, which I think is incredibly important. You can see on the screen we have two almost polar opposites when it comes to normal types, and we'll talk about both of them a little bit in here in a little bit. But Obstagoon being that strong breaker, solid speed tier, still good natural bulk. It's actually really deceptively bulky. And then you have that fat, annoying nuisance in Snorlax that switches in on every ghost type, eats up every hit. It's AV, it's Recycle Berry, it's Rest Talk, it's a bunch of Resto Chesto, another option. Great defensive abilities and setup options and Curse and things like that. And honestly can go pretty offensive. Another Pokemon that's a lot like Obstagoon's deceptively bulky. Snorlax is deceptively strong. I've run a few Adamant Snorlaxes in my day, and it doesn't, it doesn't tickle. So I definitely don't think it's that bad. But again, the versatility of a normal type. And again, I'm 100% an advocate of drafting a normal. I think it's very important. Now, that being said, doesn't mean it's the perfect typing. It's not like, oh man, normal typings are crazy. They are not exploitable in the slightest. We'll talk about like normal types themselves and their flaws, like the Pokemon themselves there in a second, but we can obviously talk about the normal types here. The lack of resistances. There isn't any. Like nothing hits normal and it goes not very effective. It's just Ghost that is immune and nothing else. I am 99% sure. Imagine I mess up a typing in a video like this. Normal type effectiveness. That would be absolutely hilarious. Yep. It has no resistances. Okay, cool. So I'm absolutely super smart. I really want to make sure because I was 99.9, but I am for sure the guy that would forget that Psychic is, something super stupid like that. But regardless, very versatile, very bulky a lot of the time, a lot of these fat normals, but they do lack those resistances that a lot of defensive Pokemon really do enjoy. So you're going to need to obviously have other defensive pieces. You can't have that one fat normal that backbones everything and be well. But again, on the flip side, you can take that the other way. It only has one thing that is super effective against it in fighting types, which is amazing. Fighting types aren't going to be on every team. They're going to be on a lot because there's a lot of great fighting types, but it's not a requirement depending on your team, which I think is important to notice, or important to note when it comes to normal types. And there's not a lot of great ones, especially without Mega Pokemon existing. Mega Lopunny on the thumbnail. If you're playing if you're playing Galar decks or you're playing on Wi-Fi, you're not playing Mega Lop anymore, which is great. There's a ton of scary fighting types that just aren't in the game right now. Even if it's just like weird threats like Breloom that's not in Galar decks, which is honestly very, very nice. And again, fighting types are great. There's a lot of great fighting types. I'm sure we'll talk about fighting types enough here soon, whenever that ends up happening, sometime within the next 15 weeks by the time the series is over. But it's not a necessity, is the important thing. So I think that's very, very important to note at the very, very least. Now, with that being said, I think it's kind of time we talk about a lot of these Pokemon individually. We're going to do this in a bit of like a two-section kind of thing, where we'll talk about fat normals and then we'll talk about more offensive normals and what they offer to teams and things like that. Obviously, we have Blissey here. Blissey is kind of like when a lot of people, this isn't a Pokemon I enjoy, keep in mind. Blissey / Chansey, you can say Chansey or Blissey. I know a lot of people have been kind of on the Blissey train this generation with boots existing, because when you have a Chansey, not only does it have all the downsides of Blissey being very passive and exploitable on the physically defensive side and just on the low damage output side, Blissey is a little bit less of that with the 75 base special attack. Has all the same coverage and moves and things like that. Is less bulky than Chansey, for sure, with an EV Light, but has the access to run heavy-duty boots, which is really, really nice. One of the ways you're really going to wear down those fat, semi-stall, balance-type teams, or even stall draft league teams, is going to be spikes, especially in Generation 7. I would spam hazards versus teams like that. They need a great removal, or Pokemon like Blissey, these really, really fat, passive normals, would take 25% on switching and not check the things that you initially think they would check. So I think this thing getting heavy-duty boots is ridiculous for it. Absolutely amazing. So I know a lot of people really do prefer Blissey over Chansey. Both of them are, serve kind of the same role, though. Chansey's just a little bit bulkier, a little bit more weak to hazards. Blissey's a little less bulky, but has the option to run boots, and is a little bit less passive. Now, with this being said, we can look at Blissey's move pool, and we'll see. It has absolutely nuts coverage, right? Blissey has great coverage. Most normal types have insane coverage. Bolt Beam, Flamethrower, all of this crazy coverage. But it's passive. And I kind of just touched on it before. A lot of these really fat normals are incredibly, incredibly passive. And, easy to exploit with a taunt, with a sub, with an encore, things like that. If they lean on that more defensive side, they're more likely to get taken advantage of. And that's a reason I don't typically draft a lot of these really passive fat normals. And the reason I spam my boy, the man, the myth, the legend, Licky, because Licky has Oblivious, and that's why I love Licky. I think it's such a great budget steal. Very bulky, obviously not as bulky as some of these Pokemon, but incredibly bulky, and it can't be taunted. And I think that's a really important thing in draft league format, being able to not be just absolutely bullied due to your passivity. A smart player and a smart builder will look at a team and be like, I'm going to exploit that. I'm going to exploit that Pokemon trying to sit in front of my team, doing passive damage. I'm not going to let it. I'm going to taunt it. I'm going to encore. I'm going to sub. I'm going to do something to really, really bully that thing. Or I'm going to bring a weakness policy for its super effective coverage. It's going to do 25%. So I think that's really important. Licky, still pretty passive offensively at the very least. Like 85, 80 is not very strong. Has that same coverage that, normal types typically do. Look at all those colors, man. But I like it because it gets Swords Dance, it gets Cursed, it doesn't get taunted, and it gets all the same coverage. So that's why I love Licky, and I think it's the best budget low tier normal. and budget low tier like Ghost Resist and things like that. I will spam this Pokemon till the day I die. I think it's great. Blissey, obviously a lot more bulky. Chansey, a lot more bulky, but a little bit more passive. We can talk about Porygon 2 as well. Porygon 2 doesn't suffer from the same passivity as a lot of other Pokemon. Again, it's not the strongest thing in the world, 105, and it's typically not invested super hard. I have seen offensive Porygons before, don't get me wrong. This is the draft format. We don't have to run physically and especially defensive Porygon. I've seen modest Trick Room variants of Porygon plenty of times. A ton of times, in fact. And obviously with an Eviolite, it's going to be one of our Eviolite mons that we're going to kind of mainly focus on. There's a couple other Eviolite normals, but this is the most notable in my mind. When I think of Eviolite Pokemon in general, I think of Porygon 2 personally. But one of the reasons this thing doesn't suffer as much from passivity is because it has access to Analytic. I've seen some people use Download back in Gen 7. They would run Download for a Pokemon they knew they'd get the attack boost on. They'd run Return Porygon 2, which is pretty cool. Trace is obviously a great ability in draft, potentially being able to use your opponent's immunities and abilities against them. Something like a Flygon, you switch hard in on it and just not take earthquake damage, which is pretty clutch. There's definitely cool things that you could do with it like that. So I don't think Porygon's too bad. Not my favorite thing in the world because it is pretty expensive, but it is a great Pokemon. It really is, and especially with access to Teleport. I'll find it eventually, guys. I promise. Eventually. Teleport, obviously giving you that negative minus speed priority, getting on out of there, getting your breaker in, setting up a Trick Room and teleporting out so your Trick Room breaker can come in. I don't think you can run Trick Room in a Generation 8 format and how fast-paced it can potentially be without having slow momentum to get into the Trick Room breaker. You simply do not have enough turns, and it's hard to switch those Pokemon in hard and have them take that full brunt of a hit that Porygon would be taking. And Porygon obviously is going to take it a lot better. There's not many moves that can OHKO this thing. There really isn't. With Eviolite plus its bulk plus proper EV investment, it's really, really tough. There's something like Miltank. Miltank was interesting because it was a normal type that got Stealth Rock, and there's not a lot of those. It's a normal type with base 100 speed, but really, really solid bulk. Again, it teeters on that line of passivity with that 80 attack and then 40 special attack, so it's not hidden from the special side at all. But incredibly bulky. This Pokemon's really tough to take down, and especially with its speed tier, it's deceptively fast, man. I've seen some annoying Miltanks run Max Jolly and outspeed my base 95 breakers and just be an absolute nuisance. And again, it has that move pool. And you know, like obviously Body Slam, but it has Earthquake and Body Press and Fire Punch and you know, a bunch of different options like that, which is obviously great. It can Thunder Wave things, be a nuisance that way. It can Toxic, and then it has access to Reliable Recovery and Milk Drink. Not a lot of fat normals have ways of recovering themselves. We're kind of talking about a lot of them here. Blissey and Chansey, Porygon, Miltank. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I can't remember another one, but I'm sure there's one or two more. But for the most part, if a normal has recovery, it's going to be Rest, or it's going to be Wish Passing. Wish Passing to an opposing teammate, or Wish Passing, or obviously Wish Protecting and keeping itself healthy. It is a bit unfortunate it doesn't get Wish, because I feel like that does lower the value of a normal type in my mind. I like my normal types being able to Wish Pass to everything, because they're typically the typing that's going to have Wish a lot, at least. That and Fairy types. So that is a bit unfortunate, but it functions as a Cleric. It's a very interesting Pokemon, and I think it's very... and obviously 3 great abilities too, especially in the draft format, having access to an immunity, an extra 2 resistances, or a way to hit the only thing immune to your moves. Great. I've seen Curse Miltank go crazy, obviously throwing off uncontested body slams because nothing can, you know, be immune to it at this point if you're scrappy. So I really do like Miltank. I think it's pretty solid. Lax, probably my second most drafted bulky normal. If I want to spend a little bit of money and not get licky, I'm gonna get Lax. I love Snorlax. I think Assault Vest Lax is crazy. Curse is obviously great. I've seen offensive 4 attacks put in work. I've seen Leftovers Protect, like Leftovers Protect Toxic type Lax go crazy. I have seen obviously, you know, Curse variants and even Belly Drum Lariats. Word to Amel. I've seen Belly Drum Arians go absolutely crazy on unsuspecting teams and do great. This is a Pokemon that is incredibly bulky, honestly, on both sides. Now, typically with Snorlax, you're not going to invest a lot of HP investment because obviously that 160 is pretty high, and you're not actually gaining a lot if you look at calcs and things like that. Percentage-wise, you're typically going to see with a lot of defense investment, because 65 isn't great, but if you can invest max investment into something like that, or close to it, plus that 160 HP, you're a lot bulkier than you'd think from the physical side. And obviously, it's that fat Spadef wall, but with an offensive presence, and I think that's great. That's another reason why I really like Snorlax. And then last one we're going to talk about here before we move on to offensive would be Audino. I think Audino is pretty solid, actually. This is another Pokemon I've drafted a few times, and I don't think it's awful because it's a Regenerator. And while this Pokemon is incredibly passive, Audino is the definition of a passive fat normal, which is not usually my style. The access to Wish plus Regenerator is very big because it gives you an extra move slot to not run Protect a lot of the times. Potentially you can, but instead of running that, you can run Knockoff. And then you can run Encore to bully other things instead. And then you can run Toxic to wear things down. You can run the Flamethrower. You can run whatever coverage move you need to break that thing sub that's going to sub in your face. Or you can just Encore and go on to something else for free. Not even have to wish yourself up most of the time and just regen it out. It has the best ability in the game, and that gives it a lot more viability than some more passive fat normals. So I think it's actually pretty solid, as much as I'd love to tell John that Audino sucks. And it is worse than Licky. I will stand by that till the day I die. But Audino definitely isn't unviable, at the very least. It's definitely solid. I will not run Assault Vest Audino, though, Ollie. Just as a heads up. And then last one I wanted to talk about really quick before we move over, because I think it's a cool transition mod in between. And I just drafted this for the first time in Ulti Harmony, and I'm excited to use it. It's Mega Kangaskhan. I think it's a Pokemon that teeters on both sides. And now, when you think of Mega Kangaskhan, you think of Mega Kangaskhan back in the day getting banned because Parental Bond was really strong before it got nerfed. Obviously, Seismic Toss is typically banned on it in leagues because it's a free 50% on everything, and it's a little too much sometimes. But it's a free minimum, like around 50-ish%, depends on the HP stat. But it's still, it's 2 Seismic Tosses in 1 turn, which isn't great. But you think of the offense, you think of Power Punch and Fake Out and Body Slam and Earthquake and all of this coverage that it gets, hitting 2 times, being really solid in that sense. So it is a very solid offensive Pokemon. Will not lie and say it's not. Very solid offensively, but defensively, it still has access to Wish and Protect just like regular Kang. And look at this thing, 105, 100, 100. That's bulkier than our good friend Mew. It has better overall bulk than our good friend Mew or any of our base 100 Pixies or anything like that. This thing is very fat with 1 weakness. It is a phenomenal Wish Passer. I believe it also gets Heal Bell, if I'm remembering my Kang correctly. It does not get Heal Bell, I was wrong. But regardless, solid Wish Passer, to say the very least. I really do like Kangaskhan, and I think it's a Pokemon, if people don't run like mono offensive Kangaskhan, they'll have a lot more success with it because it can Toxic things. It can obviously yawn things, potentially Wish, and Sucker Punch for priority, and Power Up Punch still, and be annoying, or it can roar things around. It has great coverage and great defensive utility. Great Pokemon, I'm really excited to try it, but I think it kind of teeters on that midline, like a lot of Pokemon kind of do, in being either that offensive presence or that defensive wall, that defensive Wish Passer, that really good Ghost immunity type thing. So definitely very solid. Let's go over, though. We're going to talk about some offensive Pokemon. The absolute GOAT, in my opinion. I love Megalop. I think Megalop's insane. Now, it did get nerfed this generation, obviously, in return, being cut from the game. Its most reliable normal stat. Now, it's stuck between, obviously, it has Fake Out and Quick Attack, which we can show. Now, it's kind of stuck between Facade, Strength for a little bit more, but you're probably running Facade, in all honesty, if you're picking between Facade and Strength. And then you also have Mega Kick, which is strong, but 75% accurate, which isn't great. But despite that nerf, it did get a buff in getting close combat, giving it a more reliable fighting stab, not having to worry about the ghost, or you didn't have to worry about the ghost type coming in because that's scrappy. Not having to worry about missing and taking 50% of your health. And also got U-turn for momentum, and that's crazy. A lot with momentum for those fat psychics that want to punish it with its Rocky Helmet, getting free momentum, chipping it down to 2 KO range of Mega Kick, or even 2 more U-turns or something like that. Mwah. Absolutely amazing. Megalopony in a Nadex League with something to really punish those fat psychics that want to switch in on it. There's fat fairies even potentially that want to switch in on it. Not that there's a lot of them. It's mostly psychics. It's really clutch. And then Scrappy, normal, and fighting stab. It's impossible to switch into. It's unresisted throughout the whole game. There's not a Pokemon that can resist normal plus fighting coverage with Scrappy. Obviously, because what would, usually resist normal is obviously going to be what? Rock, Steel, and probably no, I'm not thinking right. But regardless, Rock and Steel, which fighting hits super effectively, and then it would be immune to Ghost. But due to Scrappy, obviously you're not going to do that, or have to worry about that. And then Scrappy also got an inherent bump this generation in the fact that it blocks Intimidate, which is amazing as well. So Lop is still really annoying. I know a lot of people don't like Lop this gen. I've tried it, and I've loved it. I think it's absolutely amazing, and definitely incredibly slept on as a whole. Next up is a Pokemon I really want to try, and that's Obstagoon. I want to put a Flame Orb on this thing. I want to put Knockoff and Facade and Close Combat and all that stuff and just absolutely kill things. Every time I play this Pokemon, I do not have switch-ins. I do not have switch-ins. Simply do not have them. It's very, very difficult to switch into an Obstagoon. It has Parting Shot, it has Obstruct, which I think is a cool tech as well in some matchups, to either proc your Flame Orb or beta defense drop, or even both potentially in the same turn, because nothing's taking a hit from an Obstagoon if it's a -2 defense with its crazy coverage. Normal and dark plus fighting, amazing. So hard to deal with this Pokemon. And again, like I said, its heaters on that line are very naturally bulky. 93, 101, 81. Very solid. You're going to drop to any straight fighting move, but other than that, you're chilling. Very solid. Tauros is a Pokemon I actually really like. If I'm going to draft a low tier normal that isn't bulky, it's only Tauros. That's it. I actually really like Tauros. I think it's really solid. With it plus Sheer Force and a Life Orb, it's hard to switch into this thing's coverage. And even with that base 40 special attack, if I throw in a Fire Blast for your Ferrothorn, I'm doing 70%. I'm doing a lot of damage. Now, it did get access to Close Combat this generation, which is pretty awesome. You can throw off Body Slams and Earthquakes, obviously. It has that Gen 1 normal coverage, which is amazing. And even potentially some weird niche defensive utility, Intimidate if you really need it. Solid Scarfer, it's great with a Life Orb, like I said. Solid Breaker, 110 speed tier, and then 100 attack, again, isn't a lot, but when you pack that on with Sheer Force, it's doing a lot more damage because there's a Pokemon called Nidoking that's pretty damn strong. However, if you look at his base stats, he's chilling with 85 special attack. Tauros is chilling with 100 with those Sheer Force boosted moves. Now, Nidoking has better coverage from the special side than, Tauros does from the physical side, but point still stands in my mind. I think Tauros is awesome, very slept on, great coverage all around. It can hit ghosts with things like Throat Chop and even Lash Out, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if Lash Out would be boosted by, what do you call it? I don't know if Lash Out would be boosted by Sheer Force, but still very cool. Diggersby, another good normal type that I love drafting that's more offensive than is defensive. You're going to have a tough time with offensive ghosts depending on what your dark type is, or if you draft double normal, which isn't the worst thing in the world depending on your fighting resistance and things like that. But this thing with huge power, another Pokemon that is very difficult to switch into. The dual stab combination of normal plus ground is amazing. Very difficult to switch into. That plus the elemental punches, and then Swords Dance and Agility for setup, quick attack for priority. Golly, it is not fun to switch into Diggersby at all. Plus that, it also has spikes. I think spikes are amazing on Diggersby because of the amount of switches that you're going to be forcing. You are going to get up spikes. You're going to get up a layer or two, which is going to be amazing. And then U-turn for momentum, which is great on a physical attacker that is, again, forcing switches. So if there is a Skarmory on the other team, there is a Celesteela that kind of just ruins your day, and you're not Swords Dance or something like that, and you still want to be Scarf or Bandit or something like that, you can just U-turn out, get your buddy in, and do a lot of damage. Another offensive normal with not a lot of defensive utility. I have used it decently defensive before. I've run Assault Vest Porygon Z before. Don't tempt me. It's Porygon Z, adaptability boosted tri-attacks on top of like Shadow Ball or Dark Pulse coverage for potential ghosts, having Bolt Beam, Nasty Plot, and Agility for setup. You have Trick Room potentially for some cheese. You can teleport out, you can Thunder Wave things, you can be an annoying nuisance with a solid speed tier, and that 135 base special attack stat. A modest specs Porygon, if you aren't immune, you're getting to a KO or getting very close to a KO unless you're just a very select few number of Pokemon that are normal, just like a Registeel type beat. It is so hard to switch into this thing and deal with this thing defensively when it's throwing off tri-attacks, and even if you think you can, go into your Registeel. I'm not going to click tri-attack because that's illegal, but I am going to click Trick, and I'm going to give you that choice specs and make you useless. I think this Pokemon's great. It's a bit hard to facilitate a sweep with it, setup-wise with Agility or Nasty Plot, because it is pretty darn frail, and it doesn't have resistances, which is kind of going back on the negative sides of normal types, but it's so damn strong. Great example of an offensive normal. And then Mega Pidge, another one I think is really, really slept on. Now, there's a ton of other offensive normals that we could talk about, and there's a ton of other defensive normals that we could talk about, but these are kind of ones that just came to my mind immediately, that I was like, I want to talk about these ones. Mega Pidge is awesome. That normal plus flying stab combination is pretty nuts in conjunction with Heat Wave. Now, you are going to be walled out by a lot of rock types, not ground types, but you have U-turn to obviously hit those things, which is great. You can roost up, and another really slept on aspect of Mega Pidgeot is Work Up. giving it actually a pretty solid setup option in a lot of matchups. Incredibly fast, incredibly strong, 121, 135, and then decent natural bulk. I have seen Mega Pidgeot function as a fine ghost resist, so I think this Pokemon is honestly really slept on. I know in the showdown scene a lot of people do like Mega Pidge, and you see things like Mega Pidge Sand being memed because a lot of people were drafted at a certain point, but Mega Pidge Sand is obviously great. Having No Guard, not missing Hurricanes, amazing. Now, I was hesitant to put this on the list because it doesn't usually use its normal stat. It's more of a flying type. It doesn't get Hyper Voice or anything cool like that. I do wish it did, but it doesn't. It's really going to be clicking Hurricane plus Heat Wave, but regardless, it is a normal type. It is offensive, and it still has that normal typing for that defensive utility, which is nice. It's just it's also one of the rare examples of a normal type not having the deepest move pool in the world, even though it's from Gen 1, which I think is definitely interesting. Lastly, let's see if there's any other normal types that I can really think of that I didn't talk about. Staraptor, really awesome offensive option. Ambipom, I think it sucks. Beware, I love Beware. Very solid typing, obviously. Same typing as Megalopony. Not many things are switching into that thing. And it does have coverage for Ghost, even though it does not have Scrappy. Fluffy gives it great defensive utility. It makes it just a Fizdef monster. I think that Drampa has great defensive utility. X-Block can be solid in some niche matchups and things like that, just due to Specs Boom Burst and Scrappy doing damage and then good solid coverage. Not the strongest outside of Boom Burst, but it's going to click Boom Burst and do a lot of damage to your whole team. Heliolisk is a great mon, very nice speed tier. And DDs can be useful. We talked about Mega Kangaskhan, but regular Kang is good. Lanoon is a nice little setup sweeper. Meloetta is dope. We're Decory. And yeah, Stoutland sucks. I don't like it, but it can obviously form a nice little sand offense type mod. Wigglytuff is a solid low tier normal and fairy. Just don't play Gengar and you'll be fine. Swell is a great speed option, another Boom Burster, but also another Guts Breaker as well, which is definitely dope. So normal types are awesome, man. I actually really like the normal typing. It's probably one of my favorite typings in draft. Maybe it's because one of my favorite Pokemon in draft is a normal type. I say I love the typing, but I draft like one Pokemon from it every time. But I definitely think it's a very solid typing. I think offensively, a lot of the good normals you're going to see are going to be dual typing or have a good ability to just boost the shit out of their attacks. They're not going to be the naturally strongest thing in the world. Tauros isn't naturally strong. Porygon Z is pretty naturally strong, but it wouldn't be half as strong if it wasn't throwing off adaptability boost tri-attacks. Tauros wouldn't be very strong if it wasn't throwing off sheer force body slams instead of regular body slams. Or you're going to have Megaloponies or Obstagoons or Diggersbys that are having a pretty crazy dual typing, kind of bullying the things that take on normal types defensively and doing a lot of damage with those secondary stabs, opening up that normal stab to be pretty much unresisted there going forward, which is awesome. So let me know what you guys think of normal types. Let me know again what your favorite one is, and let me know what you want to see next when it comes to this series. Next episode will obviously be up next week. I'm going to try to do one of these a week. They'll kind of last us through BDSP and things like that. But if you guys enjoy, be sure to drop a like. If you're new here or you just haven't subbed yet, go ahead and drop a sub. I'd appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.